Welcome to Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truziak, and today we're going to be doing some pecan crusted lake trout. Before we get into the fish, I'm going to talk about what I'm going to be serving that with. I'm going to be serving it with a wild rice pilaf almost. So let's get the rice cooking first, then we'll get into the whole fish side of this. This is a great dish to serve for the family. One, it's extremely healthy, and we're also going to be doing some wilted spinach with it. But second of all, it's not very difficult to put together. Rice itself, pretty standard recipe. I'm going to start off by heating the pan up. And I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of butter in the pan. I'm going to let that melt. Once that melts, and it doesn't have to bubble or burn or anything like that, we're going to add our onions. Our onions are going to saute in the pan for roughly about 2 minutes, just until they're translucent. We don't want any color on the onions. We'll give the onions a stir. And again, once they're translucent, we're going to go ahead and add our rice. And this is a Christmas red long grain rice. It's a wild rice, a variation of it. It's going to have a very nice color on the plate for it. You could use regular wild rice, you could use long grain rice, you could use basmati, something like that. Add that to the pot. A word about the pot, just make sure you have something that has a tight-fitting lid on it, because we will be cooking the rice with our chicken stock here, and it's going to need to boil, but we're going to want to keep as much of that moisture in there so that rice will absorb that and obviously cook. And we're going to leave the heat on, medium-high heat, until the rice gets a little nutty in flavor. And the reason for that is because we want to develop those rich undertones or those earthy tones of that wild rice. We want to give that some flavor. And the way of doing that is letting it caramelize in the pan. I would give it another 2 minutes, and then you're ready to add your stock. Adding the stock, obviously your pan is going to be on medium-high heat. Just be careful, you don't want any of that stock to boil over or come out of the pan, because we want to use it all. This is a half a cup of wild rice to 1 cup of stock. It's usually a 2-to-1 ratio of liquid to rice. So if we were doing 1 cup, yep, you'd be doing 2 cups of stock or 2 cups of water. Think about the flavor. So the more flavor in that liquid that you're putting into the rice, the more flavor that rice is going to have. Water would work fine too, but you know what, we have the chicken stock, let's use it. Once that goes in the pan, we're going to wait for it to come up to a boil. We can speed that process up a little bit by actually putting a lid on the pan. We'll peek in there. We got our full boil now. At this point, let's bring it down to a simmer. And remember, a simmer is basically a bubble breaking the surface here and there. I got that. And from this point, we're going to let it cook for about 45 minutes. It could be 45 to 50 minutes, but we're going to check it at 45. At this point, there's nothing that we really need to do anymore with this rice. So we'll leave that off to the back, and we can start to talk about our fish. This is lake trout. Lake trout, being a fisherman, we go fishing every year up in Minnesota, and we catch walleye and perch. This recipe can be adapted with any other whitefish. It could be adapted even with salmon. Right here, we're going to be using some lake trout. Your fish can come in 2 ways. One, with the skin on, or you can take the skin off, or you can even buy it with the skin off. You want to make sure the butcher or the seafood purveyor has taken all the pin bones out. The pin bones will run in this gap right in here where you can kind of see the fish has been either cut or it's splitting a little bit. That's where your pin bones are. But you can always just check that out by running the finger over that area. And if you would know you would find a pin bone because you'd feel a little bump in the fish. So we're going to check that out. There's no pin bones there. And the next step is, how do I want to serve this? Well, depending on how I want to present it is really how I'm going to serve it. Do I want to do skin side up? In this case, no, I want the pecan crust to be my presentation side. So leaving the skin on or taking it off isn't so important in this recipe, but I do want to show it to you both ways. First thing, let's portion it out into reasonable pieces. I'm going to be looking at about 5 ounce to 6 ounce pieces. So that'll be a good piece to do with the skin on, and probably right about there. I'll do another one skin on for you. And the skin is beautiful. Taking the skin off of the fish, the first thing you want to do is you want to find the narrowest portion of the fish. I wouldn't be cutting over here, and I wouldn't be going from this way because this is wider up here than it is down here. The next thing is I'll use my non-knife holding hand, so in this case, being right hand, I'm going to hold it with my left hand. I'm going to grab hold of it with my 2 fingers on the underside and my thumb on top. I'm going to cut down just to the skin, so I'm going to cut through the meat of the fish. Yes, there's going to be a little waste there, but that's what we're going to use to hold on to. Then I'm going to hold down the portion I'm not going to be taking the skin off of, so this tail end here. I'm going to grab hold of the skin now, lifting it up, and I'm going to let my knife do most of the work. I'm going to pull this skin towards me, and my knife is just going back and forth. And if you notice, my knife is at an angle to the cutting board. It's not directly flat against the cutting board, but it's at an angle. And this angle is actually separating the meat from the skin. There you go. That is fine. That's fat there. You don't have to worry about it. You did a very good job of taking that skin off. And there's your skin. And this we can throw away. Don't need it anymore. The next step now with this is to start to bread the fish. This is going to be a classic 3-step breading for the fish. We're going to start with flour. We're going to then introduce eggs. Then we're going to do our crust. For my crust, I have ground up pecans. This is 2 cups of pecans, 1 teaspoon of dried herbs, and 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika. The ingredient we have, which we're going to start off with, is our flour. Now this is just all-purpose flour, nothing fancy about it, except we do want to season it up. We're going to season it with salt and pepper as well. About 2 pinches of salt. And while you have the salt up, let's come over and do our pecan, smoked paprika, and dried herb. And again, 2 pinches of salt in there. Seems like a lot, but trust me, with fish, we have a tendency to under-season our fish, and that's why people don't like it. You know, they just kind of, it's boring, I don't like fish. Well, it's because we're not seasoning it properly. Let's get our pepper next. Just like our salt, we're going to do 2 pinches of pepper in the flour and 2 pinches of pepper with the pecans mixture. Go ahead and mix up your pecan mixture real well. And then we're going to mix up our flour mixture as well. And when doing a breading like this, you can, one, decide on, how am I going to lay it out, what my breading is, but always have one hand that's going to be your dry hand and one hand that's going to be your wet hand. And what I mean by that is I'm going to start with my skinless, boneless piece of lake trout. Whatever hand starts the process, so my right hand starts the process, is going to be deemed my dry hand. I'm going to press that fish down in that flour, carefully lift it up, shake off any excess flour. I'm going to lay it down in that egg mixture. Then I'm going to use my other hand, the hand that I didn't start with, so my left hand. That's my wet hand, and then we're going to lay this down into our pecan breading. Now again, I'm going to lightly press the pecan breading or the fish onto the pecan breading so you get a nice coat here. And you really get, I'm going to show you what that looks like, but you really get a beautiful looking piece of fish there. I'm going to do the same thing with the next 2. The next process here is to let the fish sit for about 10 minutes. Now keep in mind, your rice had 45 minutes of cooking. Maybe we're in about 10 minutes now. Another 10 minutes isn't going to slow you out. So get the other 2 pieces breaded, or however many other pieces. Make sure you let them sit for 10 minutes. Then we'll start to cook the fish. It's been 10 minutes now, and the reason why you're letting it sit is, or the fish to sit, is so that the batter or your crust is going to actually adhere to the fish. It gives the egg and the flour time to work and actually form almost like a glue between whatever item you have, and in this case our fish, and whatever your crust is or your batter is. So that's the science behind letting it sit for about those 10 minutes. The next step, get that pan on a high heat. That high heat can be where you feel comfortable with, so that, 1, you can control the pan, and 2, we need to get a good crust on this side because the pecan side is going to be our presentation side, so we want that to look beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and put regular canola oil in here. I don't want any olive oil. I want to have the highest smoking oil that I can possibly get, because this pan's probably going to be right around 400 degrees. The second thing I'm going to need is a good fish spatula, something that has a little bit of a bend to it. See how I can bend that and get it underneath there? Also with some openings in it so that this oil that's going to be dripping off the fish, it's just going to fall back into the pan. I don't really have to worry about it too much. Alright, my pan is nice and hot. I'm going to make sure my oil is moving around that pan. And we can go ahead, once you're up to that high heat, once it's starting to smoke a little bit, turn it down to a medium-high heat. Just drop that temperature a little bit, and we can start to put our fish right in the pan. And we're going to do it pecan side down, or crust side down. Whenever you're putting anything in a pan with hot oil, as a safety precaution, make sure that food is laying away from you. So I'm going to have it fall towards the wall. And last but not least, I'm going to put the fish that doesn't have skin on it. Again, I'm going to put them, all 3 of them, so that the pecan side is down in the pan first. Always presentation side first. We're really not going to do much with the fish. We're just going to let it cook. We're going to come and check it in about 5 minutes, and then at that point we can go ahead and flip it over. While the fish is cooking, you'll notice a little bit of the fish starting to turn white on you. That's identifying that the fish is starting to cook through. At that point, I want you to go ahead and flip the fish over. It'll be roughly about 5 minutes, but depending on the thickness of your fish, just keep an eye on it while it's cooking on that pecan side down. Flip it over, give it another 5 minutes to cook now on the skin side, but turn your heat down to medium at this point. While that's cooking on those 5 minutes, we can start to talk about our third ingredient for this dish, and that's going to be our wilted spinach. Wilting spinach is very simple. All you need to do is, we're going to start again on a high heat over, and get yourself a nice saute pan, flat bottom. I don't put any water in with my spinach. You'll see recipes that say add a little water to it for purposes to help wilt it down. There's enough water in the spinach itself, and spinach has such a clean flavor by itself that there's no real need to add anything to it. Just a little salt and pepper. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of oil. You can use olive oil, you can use canola oil for this. I'll let that oil heat up. And at this point, I have 3 cups of spinach here. I love that sound of spinach. This goes very fast. It's very simple. Don't slow down with this process. You don't want the spinach to burn. You just want it to wilt. I'm going to sprinkle one teaspoon of salt in there. And then a pinch, a very small pinch, maybe 1/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. Get a good pair of tongs, and I just keep moving that spinach around in the pan, and you can see how it's going to start to cook down. Once it looks like it's about half of the volume has reduced, or half of the spinach is starting to get, I would call, wet looking, turn your heat off. There's going to be enough residual heat in this pan that will allow you to cook the rest of the spinach. It's that simple. It's maybe 2 minutes of cooking. I think heating the pan up probably takes longer than actually cooking the spinach. I keep it moving while I'm wilting the spinach down because I don't want it to burn in any one spot. There you go, wilted spinach. Simple as that. You want to turn this into cream spinach? Add a little cream to it. Simple. At this point, we can check on our rice. We can see how that's doing. Give it a little taste. I still have a little bit of water left in here, so I think it's going to need a little more time. Rice is still a little too al dente for me, but it's very close. I have a 1/4 cup of cranberries here, dried cranberries. I'm going to go ahead and add this to the rice as well, give it more of that red body. Put that lid back on, go ahead and set a timer for another 10 minutes. The rice will be done. The fish is staying in the pot. The pan is still on low heat. We'll just let it sit there, stay warm, and then we'll plate up. We're ready. We can plate up now. So our rice is fully cooked. There's no more liquid in the bottom of our pan. Just looks gorgeous there. Adding those cranberries in the last 10 minutes really brings out a lot of color. I do want to give this a little salt and pepper. I tasted it right before I took the lid off the second time, and it just needed a little bit of a little salt in there, and then a little pepper. This will have to be to your taste. Just make sure you taste it before you plate it up. And the plate up on this is going to be so great because of all the different colors. I also believe in putting, if you're going to put any sort of herbs or anything like that, if they're fresh, make sure you add them right at the end. I'm just going to sprinkle a little rosemary on top of this, and then the rest I'll just add. It's about a 1/2 teaspoon of chopped fresh rosemary. You don't need a lot. We'll do our spinach next. And remember, we already seasoned this up. And our fish is just gorgeous. Get rid of that. Just a little bit more rosemary. And there you go. Pecan crusted lake trout, wild rice with cranberries, and some wilted spinach. A simple meal prepared like it was in a restaurant in your home within about 50 minutes. Thanks again for watching Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truziak, and we'll see you real soon.